Today's Yud Ches? When's Yud Ches? What?
Yes.
Yes.
17, 18 is Tuesday.
He wants to do it today.
Tuesday after Purim is Yud Ches.
This week? I don't know. Like Yud Ches? Welcome, Aboim B'Shem Hashem B'Shem Irgun Shir Torah. We'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Zev Smith Shlita on דיני, עיסה, העשויה, לחלק. Hafrashas Challah Required, a practical guide. I'd like to big yeshakach to Rabbi Eisner for sponsoring today's shir. Even Nishmas Chamoisei Henya Bas Yitzchak Isaac Lashon Regli Yortzeit. Also as chus for zivugim for Bnei Yisrael who are in need of zivugim. So the great chus is sponsoring a share call Irgun Shir Torah 718-851-8651, email ist@yeshivanet.com. Rav Smith.
We often say that when people do the wrong thing, it's sad, but what's worse when good people who try to do the right thing end up doing the wrong thing. I think today's sugya is a perfect example of that. As we'll see, people have this gewaldige love for the mitzvah of challah, and that's the way it should be. The Chazal speak very highly of the mitzvah, and we try in any way to be mafresh challah with the bracha, but sometimes it doesn't really work, and we end up with the bracha levatala. Whether it's at home, when you want to bake, and you want to include children, and they should also make a bracha, whether it's in school, as we'll see, in day camps, or today they have the very popular challah bake, where they make challah with a big oilam to generate schusim. But the common denominator, it's situations that people very much want to do the right thing and try to have a chi of challah with the bracha, but not always is that true, and it ends up a bracha levatala. You're wondering what's wrong, what's the shaila? I have 5 pounds of dough, what could be wrong? So the good news is this is very much a hands-on sugya. Once we have the Yesod, all the questions will flow naturally, but we have to figure out that one Yesod that we need. The Mishnah Challah, Perik Aleph Mishnah Hey, says a baker that makes a big dough, לחלק, to sell it, so he's chayiv and challah. Now to us it's pashut, a Yiddish baker, just like you have to have ashgacha on the ingredients, it has to be ashgacha on the challah genumen. So that sounds fine. A baker is mechayiv and challah, wonderful. Now the Yushalmi, again on Masech Challah, there's no Bava, is a Yushalmi. So the Yushalmi in Challah Aleph Hey, the Yushalmi says the following, and I quote: Ha'Isa manos lechalka batzek. He makes a dough of 5 pounds, but he plans on dividing it when it's a dough. Patura min hachallah. I'll give you a good example. Let's say you have 3 women, and they're all Shana Rishayna, and they don't finish 5 pounds of challah per week. They only have her and a husband. So they put together, each one gives 2 pounds of yeast, they give it to the baker, and he makes it into a dough. Then you divide it, and I get 2, you get 2, and you get 2. Zakti Yushalmi, that's ha'oisi isa manas lechalka, you're dividing the dough, patur min hachallah. Even though you started out with 6 pounds of dough together, so one lady would make a bracha this week, the next week the other one, and the third week the third one will be great. No. Since even though the dough was chayiv and challah, but it was made on manas lechalka, you potter from challah. And as the Chalas Lechem in Perikes, the Siman Yud Gimel, the Talmud of the Nesivos, he explains this very case. And this is known as the Yesod for today, al manas lechalek. That means you're going to divide it, and that takes away the chiyuv. The Shulchan Aruch and Shin Chavav Beis quotes it without dissent because no one disagrees. Now before we go weiter, let me explain something. Let's talk about that case. The 3 women very much want to make challah, but they're going to switch off. So he said, what's wrong if I take off challah with the bracha? Teretz is a lot wrong. First of all, it's a bracha levatala. You're not chayiv. There's no din of ein b'tzuv v'oisa. There's no such mitzvah. And also, it's bal tashchas. Why are you taking off challah? You're going to burn it. Don't burn good dough. There's no chi of challah. This is the yesod of al manas lechalek is potter. Now, of course, you're going to wonder, so why is the baker chayiv The baker is one big manos לחלק. He doesn't keep it for himself. So that the Yerushalmi explains. The baker is chayav because he might keep some for himself, leftovers, which might sound like a chashash rochuk, but Ayin Chalas Lechem Hey Ari Yud Gimel explains this beautifully. Today's share is not for bakers. Bakers taka chayav. Today's share is for the rest of us. We want to make challah, and now we have the halacha manos לחלק is potter from challah. Not only potter, there's no mitzvah. Now the big question is, what's the logic of this? You have a 5 or 6 pound dough. Who cares what you're going to do? So the simple pshat, and this is important to understand, is that the chiyuv to take off challah is from the dough. The pasuk says, "Reish sarisei seichem challah tarimu." The bracha is Hafrashas Challah Required. But what's the objective? No one eats dough. The objective is Ba'achalchem lechem ha'aretz, like the pasuk says. Same pasuk in parashat, same parashat in shlach. The objective is when it's bread. If when it's bread it's mishloach, so there's nothing to talk about. So it's like the Reb Chaim, they say Reb Chaim in the Rambam, Chalavov Tez, this is what they say he means. He says, manos לחלק is a chsaron in the challah, in the lechem. It's not lechem. Okay. But more pashit is what the Rishonim say. Reb Chaim has a kasha on this, but the Miri says it in Challah Aleph Hey and Dalet Aleph, the Tashbitz, in Chelek Beis, Beis Aleg Aleph, they all say this Yisoid. Just like we find manos lachtoich kichatoch dami, manos is like it is, we're going to look at manos לחלק as if it's mishloach. So if you put on your Torah glasses and you see a dough that's going to be split, right now it's already split. The Masas Ben Yamin spells this out. We'll soon see in Siman Aleph, very important tshuva. Ki'ilu mitchila losh pachas mikashir. You look at it as you're making 2 pounds of challah. 2 pounds your potter. So this is the aside of manos לחלק. We look at it as if now it's already divided. And therefore, once it's divided, it's less than the shear. So the chesaron is not that because there's a lack of achdus. The chesaron is a lack of shear. You have 5 pounds, you're going to divide it in half, you're missing the shear. Now, of course, the question is obvious. We pass koloim mit lachtoich is lafka chatoch dami. Right? When you have lechem mishnah, no one says it's not lechem, it's not sholem because you're going to cut it. Zok the tuv tam v'das tlisah beis kuv peis vav. You're right. All over manos is not like it's done. But he says, since by challah the pasuk v'nechshav lechem trumaschem, the ikka of Hafrashas Challah is totally in machshava. So here your machshava makes it ke mishloach dami. So whatever this svara is, we have to realize one thing, that when you have manos לחלק, no one disagrees, no one questions. It's a din of the Yerushalmi, it's machaba. It is not chayiv and challah. Now let me ask you a question that will fine-tune this yisod. Let's say you have the same 2 newlyweds, they want to make challah every week, and they can't. Or let's say you have 2 big families, and they want to make challah every week, but it's difficult. So they make up a deal. We're going to buy a machine that makes 10 pounds of challah, and 1 week you'll make the 10 pounds, and you'll give me 5, and we'll both make a bracha, because we have 5 pounds. Next week, the other one will make the 10 pounds and give it to the friend. Is that valid? That's a real manos לחלק. But it's a very good Eitzah. Manos לחלק. There's a question. After you mechalek, what are you left with? 5 pounds. So it's not, the chesaron is not lechalek. The chesaron is you're lacking in the shear. And this is not a good idea. If you could buy a machine and switch off, it's wonderful. Now, Lamaisa, this is very clear. Now let's apply this Lamaisa, okay? I'm going to start with a question, I call it a state of emergency. Because Yidna Maisa Nefesh, to make challah every week with a bracha, and they have 5 pounds, and they have plenty of eaters, so everything is wonderful. Question is, why isn't every typical baking a banafar manos לחלק? No one makes a king-size koilich, one of those bris challahs. I think 5 pounds would be double the size of the big challahs, right? No one does that. You make the dough and you make it into loaves. Bilkalach, challah, whatever it is. So why is that manos לחלק? And all the achrayim that wrote a sefer on Hilchas Challah discussed this question. This is mamish manos לחלק Isa. You break it up as a dough and you bake it. So trust me, if you understand this, you understand the whole sugya. And let's think. I'm going to put up two cases on the blackboard and try to see the obvious chilek. One, the case of the Yishalmi is a manos לחלק. You divided the dough, you take half, I take half. Okay. Now we have a case, you made 6 loaves of challah from the dough. Why is that vadei chayiv? So the Lavush says it, the Prisha, the Shach, but it's famous as the Chiddush of the Gra, and Sivkot and Zayin, that the chilek is, a manos לחלק is only potter if you give away lacherim. We have 2 people, we divide it, we'll soon see other cases, but when is it a manos לחלק potter? When you give it to someone else, lacherim. But if you divide it to make it into loaves, to make for yourself, so that's not לחלק. So the key factor is giving it lacherim. Now, of course, when you have a family and you give it to your guests, that's you. You is your extended family. But when you make a dough and give it to someone else, that is acherim, and that's taka problem. Now, this is the first yisoid. The key word is lacherim is the ptur. The Divrei Chamudais is on the Rosh of Chaschal Sivkot and Chav, acknowledged this, but he adds another yisoid, and it's all to explain why 6 loaves is not לחלק. And he says the following yisoid. He says that when is it a problem of manos לחלק? When you're baking it in different times. Because typically when 2 people divide it, I make mine, my time, you make it yours. So if it's different times, it's not one maisa. It's not one group of 5 pounds. You made it into 2 different settings. But if you bake it the same time, then even though you made it into small loaves, but it's one baking, because you're making it at the same time. And as he puts it, and I saw the Lekad Oim and Zion Arates explains, the derech asiyah is to make it in one time. So if you have 5 pounds, you make it into 6 loaves and you bake them at one time, that's one. If you have 5 pounds and you send 2 pounds to your neighbor of dough, 2 pounds of dough to your neighbor, that's l'chalek, because they're baking at different times. So the key factor, besides what we said, lacherim, now the word is manim. Making it a different manim makes it mecholek. We'll get there soon. We'll get to every case soon. Now it seems a little more to it. And that just makes the sugi more and more gishmak. Tois in the brachas, the end of Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, quotes one of Bali HaTois, Rabbeinu Yechiel, who had a suffix with the following scenario. They made dough, then they made thin strips of dough, and they baked it or they cooked it, and that's probably some type of a luxury that they used. So the Rabbeinu Yechiel has a suffix if you chayiv and challah. Because he says, Lamais, you make it into strips, and you make it in different pots. So since it's a suffix, we'll say take off challah, b'loi bracha, which is a good compromise, because suffix challah you try to do, but you can't make a bracha misafik, so take off without a bracha. So fragt the tzlach, and the night view the tzlach on this taisvis, what's the suffix? He's keeping it for himself, it's not a chayrim, he's making it the same time, it's the same zmanim, what's the problem? So he says an unbelievable yisoid. Even though you are making it taka for yourself, and you make it the same time, but eventually there has to be a tziruf, litztarif. It has to come back to one. For example, when you make 6 loaves and you bake it, there's a tziruf. You take it out, you put it on the table, so the table's mitzarif it. So even though you divided it, but once it's litztarif, it becomes back one. In fact, he says a very when you divide it, it's a krisus. So when you divide it and send to your neighbor 3 pounds of dough, it's not coming back, you won't be mitzdarif it, that's a krisus. But if you make 6 bilkalach, 6 challahs, whatever it is, and you, when it comes out of the oven, you put it all on the table, that's litzdarif.
If you use it in a couple of weeks.
Wait, good, we're going to get to that. Good, get there. Good. But suck there, if it becomes one, so now the chiyuv was chal. Once the chiyuv was chal, you baked it together and you reunited it together. You can eat it whenever you want. There's no chiyuv to eat it right away. So he says, I'll tell you, this is a very mysterious taz. It's unbelievable how he had Kol Terkula on his fingertips. The Taz, in a totally unrelated sugi, in Yeridea Siman Kufay and Ches, discusses doing things that are avodah zarah or suspicious. One of them is Orchim Lagod. If you take out a challah and put it on the table before benching, it's mysterious. Zoket Taz, but the Minig Yisrael, that when they bake challah Friday, they take all the challahs and put it on the table and they keep it there. It's not a problem. It's done the Kavod Shabbos. What's Kavod Shabbos of putting challah on the table? He says, beautiful Yesod. We want to reunite it. So you take it out of the oven, put it on the table, and that's litztaref. So the Rabbi Yehuda says the key word is to be chayiv and challah, it has to be litztaref. And typically, it is litztaref. You bake the 6 loaves, you put on the table, and that's litztaref. The base Ephraim, that's the Mat Ephraim and Yeridea Siman Samachtes, has the very same approach. One more Yesod, and then we'll apply it Lamaisa, we'll see all of our shaylas. And that's the Helug Chazanish in Yeridea Kuf Tzadik Ches Siv Gimel, Siv Cotton Gimel. The Chazanish says, there's another factor that must be considered. Let's say you make for yourself, you make a chalukah, and you bake it at the same time as alamailas. There's one problem. You make different foods. For example, you have a 5-pound dough, and one of your children is very allergic to eggs. So most of the chals you coat with eggs, because they can eat it. This child, you make a few bilkalach just for them, no coating of eggs, because they're allergic, they can't eat it. Zok te Chazanish, if you make it into 2 foods, and you're makbid that they shouldn't mix, not just you make a big challah and a small challah, but you makbid it shouldn't mix, that can't become one. 2 oichlim can't become one. And I'll give you a better mashal. I hope the oilam knows this. If you make 5 pounds of dough, and you're not giving it away, you're keeping it, 3 pounds you make challah, and 2 pounds you make kakish cake. Kakish cake is chayiv and challah. It's a regular bilkalach. Even a bilkalach is chayiv, but a bilkalach certainly. And you don't want the 2 to touch in the oven, because kakish cake is not challah, and challah not kakish cake. So that's not chayiv and challah. And maybe if 2.5 pounds, you take up a loy bracha, but not chayiv and challah, because you're makbid that shouldn't mix. So you have 2 different foods that can't become one. So the sides of the Chazanish is if you make it into 2 foods and you makbid, it can't ever become one. So Rabbi, let's chazar what we have, let's apply this lemaisa. We are basically making challah with the bracha has to be done properly. It could result in a bracha levatola. The 4 factors are acherim, is pata, that's the gra. Different zmanim, that's the divrei chamudais. Litztaref, has to reunite, that's the tzlach. And oichlim, 2 separate oichlim, 2 different oichlim, can't be one. That's the Chazanish. And I wanted very much the oichlim should enjoy this as much as I enjoyed it. And I was hoping to find somebody that could remember this very easily. And the Baruch Geholfen, I wrote it on the paper, and it was Mom was waiting for me. The 4 preconditions is Aleph, Zayin, Lamed, Aleph. Orchim, Acherim, Zmanim, Litztaref, and Oichlim. And that spells the word Ozla. You see, when you have a Chiyav Challah, it's great. But if you do the wrong thing, the Chiyav is Ozla, it goes away. And that's what I remembered. I looked at the Ozla, and I see the 4 different ways to remember with a problem. So if someone says, you learned Hilchas Challah today, I had a big question. I make 5 pounds, I make it into 6 loaves, or 20 bilkalach. Why isn't that manos to Chalek? So tell them, Ozla, leave me alone. That's it. So you have to tell him. Because when you make into loaves or bilkalach, it's mamish, none of the Ozla. It's not a chayrim, it's not different zmanim, it is litztaref, and of course, it's not different oichlim. Now sit back and enjoy, we'll do the rest of the shaylas, you'll see how it's all very much hands-on. Okay, we'll start with the common question that young couples or older couples, everybody has this shayla. See, if there is an Inyan Gadol, the Ramah in the Archaim, the end of Reish Membeis, strongly recommends making challah kavod Shabbos. There are 2 reasons for that. Number 1, to have fresh challah every Shabbos. It's a kavod Shabbos to bake your own challah. You're not using paspalk like in those days. But the second objective is, like the Ramah says, to make challah on Erev Shabbos. Because the chet of Adam and Chava, Chalas Shalom was done on Erev Shabbos, we have to rectify. So there are 2 objectives. So here's the problem. If you have a big family or you have bachrim, so when you have bachrim, 5 pounds goes easily. So every week you make 5 pounds and shalom al Yisrael. But let's say you have a young couple, just the two of them, or you have an older couple, the kids are married. The kids, you don't have 5 pounds of people eating 5 pounds of challah. So let me suggest the following eitzah. You make a dough of 5 pounds, which is how you make a bracha, right? You have a neighbor that has a sick child. They would love to make challah, but they don't have the time. It's a big job. Send them 3 pounds of your dough. They could just pop it in the oven. They'll make bread and pop it in the oven. You'll have a double mitzvah. You made challah on 5 pounds, and you got a mitzvah of chesed and bilkalach. Good idea? Terrible idea. It's a bracha levatala. Because here you have all of Oslo. It's acherim. They're baking in a different zmanim. There's no litztarf. It's going to their kitchen and their home. And it's different oichlim. Now, different oichlim, you could say maybe it's the same. So, but lamaisa, the main reason is the first 3. And that's why this very case, believe it or not, would be a bracha levatala. We want to do the right thing. We want to do chesed nachtetzu. But sending away the dough is a typical, classical example of Hafrashas Challah Required. And no one disagrees that this is wrong. Again, if you have 3 pounds, so you can take a beloy bracha, but 2 pounds, you left for 2 pounds, there's no chiyuv challah at all, even beloy bracha. Consider the next question. I'm going in order. You bake all 5 loaves, but lamaisa, you're not so generous. You take 3 pounds, 3 pounds of the baked challah, and put in the freezer. So some achayish is for freezer taste. Let's not get into that now. But you bake 3 pounds of baked challah. Any problem with that? Like you said, you're eating it next week first. But there's no problem. Because this, once it was baked 5 pounds, none of the Osla apply. There's not a chayrim, it's the same zman. It is the tzarif. After you bake, you put it on the table, and it's not different oichlim. So here, the fact you're eating next week doesn't impact the sugya whatsoever. So you have 2 cases, one is perfect and one is perfectly problematic. The difference is knowing halachas of challah. Now the only problem with this, of course, is you're not going to have the inyan of baking challah every Erev Shabbos, because you're using the second batch for the next week. Well, what could you do? Better do that than make a bracha levatala. Oh. But I have an eitzah. Maybe we could chapraim both. How about if I bake 5 pounds, I put it on the table, and I give 3 to my married children or to a neighbor, whatever it is. I give away 3 pounds of baked challah. So the milas next week, I'll be able to make a bracha again, and every week. So what do you say to that? So this sounds pretty good. It's litztaref, it's the same bread, I make it at the same time, but the bell starts to ring, aleph, acherim, you're giving to someone else. But the minhag seems to be that this is fine. Question is, where did the minhag come from? What's the justification of the minhag? So listen to a beautiful, not a dik, just learning up the Yishalmi properly. I'll read the Lashon Yishalmi once again. Ha'oisa manos lechalka botzek. What is the problem when you divide it when it's in the dough stage? Our case, you divided it after it was baked. Zok beis Yosef and Simon Chavav al pi Rashba, and he said that's the pashta of the Yishalmi. The only problem is when you divide dough. When you divide the actual baked product, there's no problem. And that's the wording of the Shulchan Aruch. Ha'oisa לחלק botzek is a problem. So our case is taka not a chayrim. It's not a problem of a chayrim. Because you baked it for yourself and you gave it away later. So now we have, this case could be good with all 4 problems avoided. But I'll tell you another svar. And that seems to be the Aruch HaShulchan in Sif Ches says this, that when you bake 5 pounds, it's yours. So you want to give it away, that's very nice, but it's yours. It's not a chayrim, it's yours. You gave away yours. So that's the justification of the minhag Yisrael, and this is extremely nageya. We'll soon see from mishloach manos and every other case where you bake the right amount, make a bracha, and you give away some of the baked products. And if that's the case, so then we're fine. The pliya is, there's a tshuva from the Eretzi, the Kajik Lava, and whoever learned the sugya properly can't miss this. This is one of the ikka parts of the sugya. And he discusses this shayla. The Minchas Yitzchak and Chelek Yotzim and Koveis quotes this. But listen to his Einfa. He says, when is that true? That when Oisi Samanas Lechalka Batzek, that means like this. I made £5 for myself, and then I decide to give it away later to someone else. That's fine. But let's say you made the 5 pounds of dough originally, knowing you're going to give it away to someone else. Maybe that's worse. Because in the dough is already like it's about to be mishloach. And he says that it's a plea, because the minig ha'olam is to be mekel. I don't know why. He says, I think you should make me mafresh without a bracha. Because since you made the dough knowing you're going to give it away, the Eretz Tzvi and the Minchas Yitzchak say it's not pashut. That's interesting. The Eretz Tzvi wrote a sefer to Melamed Schus Aminoga Yisrael. We look at a lot of his tshuvas, and here he's the one that makes a problem with the Minig Yisrael. The Minchas Yitzchak, he says, L'maisa, but I found the Chazon Ish. Listen, the Chazon Ish says that if it's all the same oichlin, there's no problem. So probably the Bnei Torah who go with the Chazon Ish Psakim, they can make a bracha. But if you ask me, it would be better to avoid the suffix. And he says, keep 5 pounds of dough for yourself and send away the rest. Now that's not practical, because we can't use 5 pounds if you have just 2 people. So you have to understand, Lamaisa, most poskim say that this is a perfect minig. You make 5 pounds, you send it away afterwards, because you didn't make it batzek, chalukah. The Lekir Oim, Abanka Boy in the Sefer Zayin Beis, Lahiras Nosim Dalet Tzadik, the Shever Alevi, all say it's not a problem. It's one chiddush, a suffix of the Eretz Tzvi that seems to question this, because you made it Almanas Lechalek Batzek, and that's literal, and that's a problem. Now, Lamaisa, a lot has been written about this, but what bothers me is this is a Purim issue. People make 5 pounds of bilkalach, l'mashal, and send it out. Or we'll soon see other shilas. I wanted to get to the bottom of this. Let's see what our Heintige Poskim discuss. So listen to this. The Sefer Kovetz Halachos in Hilchos Purim Amud Reish Chaf has this shilah. You're making 5 pounds of dough, making it 20 bilkalach, and sending them all away. She says, no problem. Because you made the dough as one, you mechalek made dough, made the bilkalach, no problem. He said, I found the Chazon Ish that Taka says, don't worry. As long as you know it's all going to go out, you're not going to keep it for yourself, it's fine. So we add, and it's pashut, even though you're eating none of it, makes no chilek. Because you made 5 pounds, la'atzmai, and then I gave it away. So at least according to this Kovetz Halachos of Shmuel Kamenetsky, he's convinced is no problem whatsoever. Then I looked at another Hilchos Purim Sefer, that Shoshanas Yisrael's Amud Reish Tes, who's the Psakim of Rabbi Shlomo Miller. He has this very shaila, and he says Rabbi Shlomo Miller said there's another reason why it's not a problem. Listen to Einfeld. If I bake 20 bilkalach to give away, it's like I'm like a nachtoim. A baker that gives away is chayiv. So why am I different than a nachtoim? But the next sif he says, but lamaisa, some hold, and he's referring to the Eretz Tzvi, that it's a problem. So it's kedai, after you make the 5 pounds of challah or the bilkalach, put them all on a table and make a dramatic tzir of keli. Then even if you hold it was a problem, you reunited it. You're going to send it out a minute later, makes no chilek. Make a new tzir of keli. And Rabbi Felder in his Sefer on Purim Shir Halach Amud Tav Tzadik Zayin has the same exact conclusion. He says really it's not a chashash, because most places is fine. But since the Eretz Tzvi had a problem and Chazis got a problem, it would be advisable to put them into one basket or into one keli, make it tzir of sal. Tzir of sal makes a chiyuv, and then send it away. So our question of making mishloach manos and all of it's going out, I would say most places it's fine as is. If you do it as is, you're fine. There is a chashash, the shita of the Eretz Tzvi. Some say it's advisable to make it into one, but I can't say it's ma'akiv. This is also negeya, more typically. A mother makes 5 pounds of challah, and every week sends some of it to a married child. Same shilah. You're doing it al manas to send to your child. Most places hold it's fine. and you want to be choishev with eretz tzvi, make a tzir of sal after it comes out of the oven. In our camp, there's one of the Rebbetzins that's very much into baking challah, and in camp, she buys 5 pounds of flour, whatever, she makes 5 pounds of challah in the camp's oven, and of course, only her and her husband, so she gives to the other Rebbeim challah l'kavod Shabbos, and we're machaya with it, it's wonderful. Same shayla. Most poskim hold it's perfectly legitimate, according to Eretz Tzvi, it's a tzarachian, it's kedai to make it tzir of sal. What's very negeya, listen to this, let's say you're not so generous, you're not sending away, you want to have challah for next week as well, but you have an einfall, you don't like freezer taste, or you want to make challah every single Friday, so you have a brainstorm. Parshas to Erev Shabbos tetzava, you make 5 pounds of dough. You take 2 pounds of dough for tetzava, freeze 3 pounds of dough in the freezer, and that you're going to make on Erev Shabbos kisisa. So you have fresh challah. Question is, are you chayim challah in that situation? So believe it or not, this is a problem, because here you're mamish being mechalik Isa. So this amanas l'chalik Isa. This is worse than the previous. And look, let's go to our checklist. It's not lacherim, it's takal atzmai, but it's different zmanim. You're making it next week. It's not litztaref. Oh, it's good because it's all oichlim. So here it's la'atzmai. It's one food, but you're missing litztaref and you're missing zmanim. But the truth is the ikka chasim in a sefer, because the ikka is you machalik it as an Isa. So here we can understand why most poskim are concerned. Lamashal, in the Shmir Shabbos, in Membeis Harid Aleph, quote Rab Shlomo Zalman that says, this case you could do, but don't make a bracha. Because you divided an Isa. That could be the worst problem. Now the same Rab Shlomo Zalman says that if you make 5 pounds and freeze some of it, it's fine. That's good, because you made it one time. But this, you're dividing the Isa. The leket ta'ima, that's a real, the chalas lechem, all say if it's made in different days, that's mechalak Isa, and that's a problem. The one that I found that was mekel is Rav Ozna in Mibeis Levi, Hey Lamed Vav. His shita is, and that's, you see it implicit in the Shevet HaLevi, Chelik Dalet, Kuf Mem Hey, that the main factor is la'atzmai or acherim. That's what he holds, and that's really the main svara. So he says, once you have la'atzmai, forget about everything else. So even though you're freezing it for next week and baking it next week, but who is it for next week? For you. So the case when you send someone a dough this week, you send your neighbor a dough this week, that's a problem. Why? Because that's lacherim. But if you freeze the doughs for next week, Rav Ozna is mekel. But I must say, it's pretty much a das yochid. I think Dov Feinstein in Yad Doidi Chelak Beis is also mekel because the ik is lacherim. But we should suggest, it seems to me at least, that most poskim hold it's a problem. So you could do it, but yafresh beloy brach. Now, what seems to be a good eitzah, if you could do it, is you partially bake it all in the same week. Now, let's say, same case. Erev Shabbos tetzava, you make 5 pounds of dough, bake it. Take 3 pounds of partially baked challah out of the oven when it's edible but not fully baked, and then freeze it the next week. So the ma'ila is, you bake them all, and it's edible, it's like you baked it all. Also, Erev Shabbos kisisa, you're going to be able to bake challah again, partially. And if you're choishes for freezer taste, I hope there's no freezer taste. But l'maisa, here you have ala ma'ilus. Now, this is, l'chayra, a very good eitzah. Another question, the point is, let's say you have 2 shana rishayiniks and they want to bake challah every week, but they don't have enough eating people. So to switch off, I make 5 this week, and I'll give you 2.5 pounds dough. Next week you make 5 and give me, is not a good eitzah, because we're back to a real case of acherim and mechalak Isa, and it's not litztaref. So again, a subtle difference makes all the difference. Now, lamais, let me just review, and then we'll go to other shilas. But someone wants to make 5 pounds of challah every week, so the first thing to do is make sure it's ois gehalten. Having a skula and having a mitzvah, that's a bracha levatala, is not a skula, not a mitzvah. So there is definitely an inyan to make challah every week. But the best eitzah, of course, is bake 5 pounds and get guests or have children, and you finish it. But if you can't do that, the eitzah is bake all 5 and put some baked challah in the freezer. I think baking it partially is just as good, almost as good, probably just as good. The mileage you'll make next week also, but that you can make a bracha. When you give away baked challah to neighbors or friends, whatever it is, or children, I can't say it's perfect, because again, according to the Eretz Tzvi, it's a tzarachian, but it's good enough. Most fine. The real problem is giving away a dough to someone else. That taka should not be done. That's taka more or less a bracha levatol. Let me ask you a beautiful shaila, which negayah to probably all of us. We assume that 5 pounds is chayiv mechala. Now listen to this. If that's the case, every 5 pound mitzumtzum baking is a built-in manos לחלק לאחר. Why do I say that? Pashut. You have 5 pounds of dough, you have to mafresh challah. What are you doing with that challah? Giving it to a kohen in the olden days, and today you're burning it. So you're giving it lacherim. So the chalas lechem and other gedolei achrayim ask, why isn't every 5 pound baking a built-in manos l'chalik? So you're going to laugh, but why isn't it true? So what are you going to do? Don't take off. So you can't eat it. So you go in circles. That's not an answer. What are you going to say? Probably 5 pounds of chumrah, 4.5 is enough. Okay, that you could say. But I'm talking about if you hold 5 pounds mitzumtzum starts the chiyuv, so you have a built-in manos l'chalik. So I'll tell you a beautiful teretz. Now, Yehuda in Tanyana Yardei Simon Reish Aleph says this very dramatically. He says that really in every Hafrashas Challah there are 2 different parts. There's giving to the kohen, which is wonderful, but the main mitzvah is timata your lechem. You can't eat it without being mafresh. It's timata your lechem. He says theoretically, if you're mafresh and don't give it to the kohen, you're yaitza. You're gezel from the kohen. But the objective is timata your challah. The chinuch has it from a different angle. The chinuch in Shin Pei Hey writes, why did Baruch give a mitzvah of challah? The Baruch wanted to make everything we do kedusha. That even the bread that we eat has a mitzvah of challah. So he says it's for us, l'zakaiseinu b'mitzvah, b'tmidius, to make us, every bit of our achila is a mitzvah. Both are saying one beautiful yesod. The Hafrashas Challah, we taking off the challah is to be matir and to mirkadesh our bread. Oy bazoi, taking off challah is not lacherim, it's la'atzmoi. This is what I thought is pashut, and I found taka the chalas lechem, the psicho Isai, and bemis the kosher glove in that same tshuva says this yisoid. This would be considered la'atzmoi. It's like mata ve'achila. Okay, you want to see the Pischei Zuta and Zayin Yutes and the Chalas Lechem has other lamdash pshatim. I think the simple pshat is this would be considered la'atzmai. Now let's move on to another questionable area. In school or in day camps, they want to give a hands-on chinuch, which is wonderful. Hands-on chinuch is very, very meaningful. And they want to train the girls young to make challah. So what do? Erev Shabbos, the teacher brings in 5 pounds of dough, or makes dough in the school, whatever it is, and she cuts off little pieces for each student, and make it any shape you like. I'm going to give you a baggie, take it home, give it to your mommy, she'll put it in the oven, and you'll have fresh baked challah. No, and the teacher wants to show them how to do it, so she takes the 5 pounds of dough, makes the bracha, and takes off a piece of challah, puts it aside, and gives each girl a piece of dough, make it in your shape, and take it home, and give it to your mother. No, you like that idea? Problem. This is a bona fide amanas l'chalik l'choladeis. So it's not a chinuch. It's a bracha l'batol. It's a very poor chinuch. So the better eitzah would be take off same story. Break each child a piece and bake it in the school. Then you have roiv pais and hold. It's fine. Again, the fact that you're baking it in school, it's all one baking. The fact that you give it out to each student afterwards, not a problem. Okay, the Eretz Tzvi would have a concern with that, but at least this has alamailis. It's a chayim after it was baked. So it's better to do that than to do something that's not chayim mechala. Now, what you could do, again, if it's shaykh, the teacher should make 7 pounds, 5 pounds keep for herself, and the 2 pounds give out to the children any way she wants. Sometimes the teacher is very sympathetic to the child's needs. Listen to this. And they say, okay, you make your own braiding or face, you want to put it in the, whatever you want to do, you can make the b'chal the way you like it. The child is Adam writes the Hafrashas. The teacher has special paper that doesn't burn in the oven, and on each, like, he puts a piece of parchment paper, and this is Chani's, and this is Leia's, and each one wants their ma'asiyot l'spoyer, their artwork back. Why is that a problem? This is makpid. This is not litzaref. This is the chazon ish. You don't want to put them together. So that's again another oversight that people don't realize. So to make it right, either you could make 7 pounds and give the 2 pounds, the break of 2 pounds, they could do what they want. Doesn't make a chilek. You made it on your 5 pounds, or you at least minimally make it into small pieces, bake it there, and give it them to take home.
Could you make your bracha on somebody else's?
No, we'll get to that soon. It has to be either a shliach or it becomes yours. That's an excellent question. We'll get to that very soon. Now, let me just give you another mashal. It's a long Erev Shabbos during the summer. The kids are home. It's during the summer. There's no school. And the mother doesn't know what to do with them. She has a great idea. She makes 5 pounds of dough, mafresh challah, and gives it to each boy or girl, just to keep them all busy. Make the braid the challah the way you want. I don't care how it comes out. Funny, make an L, any shape you want. Is that fine? That's fine. Why not? It's not lachayim, it's la'atzmoi, it's not, they're not makbid, it's tzarek. So that's a perfect Eitzah. Now, if some of the children put on toppings that the other ones are allergic to, then you have a problem of 2 different oichel. Today, we'll get to your question right now. There's something called a challah bake, or they call it a challah party. Bekitza, this glorifies in a beautiful way the love Klal Yisrael has to Hafrashas Challah. When someone needs a schus, a chayla, or a shidduch, they have a few women, sometimes you get number in the hundreds of women, get together, and they're all mafresh challah with the bracha, and they give the schus to the needy party. Again, it's a wonderful way of highlighting the schus that we have to be mafresh challah. Some challahs do it right before the chuppah. There's a lot of different, you see the love you didn't have to the mafresh challah. But like everything else, it has to be done properly. I'll give you a simple eitzah. How much your eitzah? Let's say I'm the organizer and I bring in 20 pounds of dough, and I give each lady, let's 4 ladies for 5 pounds of dough. Mafresh challah. That's wrong. If it's not hers, then there can't be mafresh challah. It has to be we say seichem. So you have 1 or 2 choices. Either you say, I'm giving you a ton of 5 pounds of dough, keep it, bake it, and take it home. Or, if I want to keep it, I'm making you my shliach. A shliach can make a bracha. But it has to be lachem. Now, number 2, to give it to a girl on the bas mitzvah is ineffective. It doesn't work. Number 3, some people go to I heard this, I was never one there, but I'm telling you what I found out. Some women come and they lose their cheshik because they're 5 pounds, it's someone else's dough. Is that my type? I'm mafresh challah with a bracha, and the dough, I'm going to leave it on the table. Whatever happens, happens. If the dough is not used, it's not made to eat, there's no chiyuv challah. That's possible. No. But let's talk more practically. Let's say you have a big turnout. You have 50 people, 100 people. I heard even more than that, numbers that come. We can get so much dough. So no problem. You call up a Hamish bakery. Please deliver 100 pounds of dough. Okay, so problem number 1. First of all, a Hamish bakery, any Yiddish bakery that has sells dough, the halacha you have to make the mafresh challah. Mafresh challah and Issa. So they send you ready mufresh dough. You machabit 20 women with brachas of batala, mamish. An oversight, but it's terrible. Now, some ways it happens, you could say, tell the mashkiach, listen, I'm ordering for Tuesday afternoon 100 pounds of dough, don't take off challah. And if he remembers and he marks it down and it happens, good. But sometimes you call the fella in the office, the Tony, you want don't take off challah, whatever you want, lady, hangs up. So he's happy to get rid of you. He doesn't know what you're talking about. Mafresh and mashkiach, these are Chinese to him. So it has to work. Now, so I have a better idea. I'll buy a goyish from a goyish bakery that has a good hechsha, 100 pounds of dough. They were mafresh challah, that's for sure. No, good idea, right? Terrible. It's going to get a pasik. Arisa Seichem, it has to be a Yiddisha. So these problems have to be, of course, understood that these are basics. But let's talk about tachlis. What do I do to make it work? So the simple eitzah is, if the organizer gives out to each participant 5 pounds of dough and all the ingredients, make your own dough, mafresh challah, and take it home. That's the best eitzah. Okay. Sometimes they find it's too difficult. They want to make, let's say they have a big kitchen, they make 100 pounds of dough right then and there. But the problem is, you have to take off challah right then and there. One hafrasha works for 100 pounds. Now you give out the dough, it's too late. Don't be mafresh and break it up into 20 parts, 5 pounds each. Going bracha she'ein tzricha. You're causing unnecessary bracha, one bracha kapata. So there is another Eitzah, and many people do this. They ask, do me a favor, come to the party with your 5 pounds of dough, be mafresh it there, and give the schus to whoever needs the schus. Now, the ma'isa, some people find it's a little difficult schlepping 5 pounds of dough back and forth. Truthfully, in Hilchas Challah, you could see this. If you Chalas chutz la'aretz, you could take off a piece of the dough, more than a kazayis. When you get there, you mafresh from that piece a kazayis, and the rest you'll use to bake. Because chalas chutz la'aretz, you don't need the entire dough to be lefanecha. So that's a shtickle of an eitz. Now, but lamaisa, let's be clear about this. When someone has a bakery, you're not allowed to sell dough unless you mafresh challah, because it's a chiyuv on the baker. Now, the truth is, that's why people ask me, Lamashal, they see they're selling in the bakery, in all the groceries, ready-made dough, just pop it into the oven, and it comes out baked. Do I have to be mafresh challah? Can I be mafresh challah? The answer is, if it has a decent hechsher, then it's ready mufresh, so you can't be mafresh challah. Someone asked me the following question. He bought, I think they told me, 3 bags of 2 pounds frozen dough in Trader Joe. I guess that's some type of a store, Goyisha store. It's not a Yidisha brand, it's a Goyisha brand, but it has a hechsher. So it's 3 bags of 2 pound dough, frozen dough. He puts it together, he has 6 pounds of dough. Is he chayiv mechallah? So the truth is, could be he was. Because 2 pounds is not chayiv mechallah. By combining 3 times 2, he's making the chiyuv challah. This is a new chiyuv challah that he created. Because now we have 6 pounds of dough that is chayiv challah. And it's very yitachin that since he created the chiyuv, it's now the Issa that the Yisrael made. He combined the Issa to make it into 6 pounds, and that could be, you can make a bracha. What's the difference? The Issa, the 2 pounds never was a patur of challah, because never chiyuv challah. But he made it into a chiyuv. He made it 6 pounds into a chiyuv. He's matzaref b'tzal. Just like you have 2 different 2 pounds and 2 pounds of someone else's dough, you can put it together. From no chiyuv to chiyuv, that you could do. Now, lamaisa, question, beautiful shayla. Let's say someone made it shaloi l'chalek, and he changed his mind. And after he made the dough, he decided to make it l'chalek, and he mechalek it. But when he made the dough, he made it shaloi l'chalek. So the Ramah says that since when you made the dough, it was challah chiyuv, the chiyuv remains. Fakert, let's say he made it l'chalek, and then he ended up not being mechalek it. So now, this, once lamaisa, mechalek, you have 5 pounds of dough, zok the chalas lechem, you do have to take off challah. The chilek is pashit, because the only heta is amanas the chalek kim mechulik. But if it never ended up being mechulik, there can't be any p'tur. One more point about the Inyan of the Yom, and then we'll get to really the most beautiful part of the sugya, and that is, and there is clear pasuk that although the objective is ba'acham lechem ha'aretz, the chiyuv challah is reish zavisei seichem terim challah. And one is supposed to take off challah from a dough. If you forgot and you already baked the challah, no, then you could take off from baked. But the chiyuv is dough. There is one time that minig Yisrael is that we dafka take it off when it's all fully baked, and that is matzah, because you don't have the prerogative, it will be too complicated. Fine. Achrein chav, let me tell you a beautiful shayla ma'isa. Yidden very much want to bake challah every Friday with a bracha, but they don't have the time or patience. There's a big family, and taka, family is first. You can't do it. It's a big job taking out the machine, making the dough. What would you say to this wonderful solution? You'll have a Hamish baker Friday, bakery. He will bake a big volume, hundreds of pounds of dough, and sell to whoever wants to buy 5 pounds or more of dough. So you're going to buy 5 pounds or more of dough, and you'll make a bracha, and you'll bake challah kavod Shabbos. It cuts the work in half, or in maybe more than that, and it's a mechaya. What would you say to that Eitzah, which could alleviate the problem that people have of doing it kalach? So the MS is very good. Now Lamaisa, you'll say, but 1 second. Lamaisa, it's a manos לחלק. So I have two. So why is the b'chalach chiyuv? When you get it, you got it when there was no chiyuv. So they're too simple to root them. When I divide it into 5 pounds or more, there's no p'tur manos לחלק. But the Mishnah says by a baker there is no p'tur manos לחלek. So that doesn't bother us. What does bother us l'chayra is a big problem, because the baker, when he makes 100 pounds, whatever he does in a machine, has to take off challah. So he's sending you challah mufresh. How could he sell without being mafresh? More than that, let's say he won't. He knows you're going to do it, he won't. But there's another problem, because right now 100 pounds has a chi of 1 challah, 1 bracha. By dividing it into 20 parts, he's being going bracha she'ein tzricha, and that the Gemara says in Yuma Daf Ayin is wrong. And that's why the Bach in our Simon Shin Chavav, it seems in his time there was such a minig. He says this minig has to be discontinued. It's wrong for the 2 reasons. Number 1, baker don't sell, you're not sell without making challah. And number 2, he says the real problem is you're being going bracha she'ein tzricha. So you have 19 bracha she'ein tzricha. And the Bach is very critical. Shari leimari lebalei razu. Whoever said this is wrong. The Bach says moichelim, and I makalaf my rebbeim issa gamahu. So this disturbed the minig, the prevalent minig. Shimu sechi nafshechem. Kumt the Masas Binyamin, a contemporary of his. They're both at the Midim of the Marshal, and he says a davar nifla ma'oid that we'll very much appreciate. And he said the following. The baker made 100 pounds of dough. Taka. The chayra, he's chayiv mechala, 1 chiyav on 100 pounds, because it's 1 unit. But wait a second. The baker made 100 pounds al manos לחלק. Right? That's pashut. He's not doing it for himself. Now, zok der, a novel suggestion. Just like a manos לחלק is such a powerful divider that it makes from a chiyav chala into a patur, our sugya today, Amraz Chalek Batzek Potter Kal V'choima, it should make to a chiyuv. So when you put on your Torah glass and you see 100 pounds of dough in the big machine, it's a manos l'chalek k'mecholek, and you have 25 pounds. Zok the Mas Ben Yamin and Simon Aleph that Lamaisa, I don't know what the problem is with the minig, and he quotes our Yushalmi, and he says if a manos l'chalek helps to be makel, to be pater, koshkein, it helps to be machmer. The funny thing is, in our scenario, we want to be machmer. Typically, we want to make a chiyuv challah, and he's fine with that. So he says, what's the problem? Keep the minig as it is. And then he says something that you have to be a paisik to say. So since it's okay, let us be mechazik the minig. Don't make hard for Yidden to make challah every single week. If someone divides an eitzah that works, don't mess with success. And he says, therefore, we have to encourage the minig. But then he says 2 things. Number 1, there is a minig, it's a minig zar taka. By chasanas, don't ask where this came from. They brought in a big dough, they put it on the table. Now, I don't know logistics, but it says during the drushes, this is what Masbi Yaman says, during the drushes, they would come take 5 pounds of the dough and be mafresh challah and somehow generate schusim for the new couple. So Zot Masbi Yaman, well, that even I have a major problem with, because that's 1 dough. Not made on manos l'chalek. It doesn't go to certain people. You're taking out of a big dough, that's wrong. Also, he says even more emphatically, what's much worse is if you buy yeast from the dough from the guy to be mafresh. That he says you buy 100 pounds of dough, it's all pater, and you can't do anything. That's what he wants to say. Fine. Now, L'maisa, the Bach had a problem. Why is the baker allowed to sell it? He has a chiyuv challah. Zok the Plotzki Goyin in Magen Elef Siman Tov Nun Zayin, in our Chaim that is, he says, I don't know what the problem is. He says, you're not allowed to sell it to someone because he might use it without hafrashas. Then you can't put in the store dough without being mafresh, because the person that'll buy it will use it as it is. But if he's selling it to someone that's doing it expressly to be mafresh challah, it's not going to happen. That's one thing we don't forget, the mafresh challah. He says, therefore, he says, what's the problem? why the second taina goyim bracha shein tzricha? So listen to what he says. He says that lamaisa, a shaychet that makes a bracha on shechita could check the number of animals and make kisi adam with one bracha, right? But if I come with my chicken to the shaychet, say, please shecht it, and I want to make the own kisi, could I do that with a bracha? Yeah. What about bracha shein tzricha? I'm not mechuyev to use his bracha. I want to make my own bracha. Each chicken is another mitzvah. Zokter, if you look at it, manos l'chalek kimechulik. So you're looking at 100 pounds of dough. What do you see? 20 separate chiyuvim. So the truth is, you could. Taka, one person can make a bracha for all of them, but I want to make my own. So what's the problem? The Taz in our Simon Shin Chavav quotes Ishver, the Bach, and he says, but Lamaisa, I think if you do it right, we can make it work. And that is, he says it a few times, and he stresses it because this is really important. If you have a steady customer that every week buys by you, and you know you count on them, so we look at it that when you're making the dough, it's already theirs. It's like a shliach. He says, if you have a steady customer, so the dough belonged to the koina from the moment you start making the dough. So then you're just giving him theirs. It's like me and you, we put together 10 pounds of dough, 5 me, 5 you, because you have a big machine. So I could take it and make a bracha because it's mine. It's not you. You can't use mine. He says, if lamaisa you make taka for steady customers and you give it to them, it's as if it's theirs, mikar. But then he also says, but make sure it works with a steady custom. He also throws in that the chasen is pshita the asa, and also a guy is a problem. But what's interesting is the shach adenenu hashach. The Shach quotes the Mas Binyamin and says, but ein dvar muchrachim. And he says at the end, I'm not sure if he's going on this case also, he quotes his mother, the Tzadekis and other Tzidkaniyas that didn't go for these eitzes. Now, it could be he's going also on the Chasun, I'm not sure, but if he's quoting his mother, Imi Tichya, and the other Tzidkaniyas, they didn't do this. The Hashulchan in Sif Yud writes, Bizmanenu lo shamanu haminig hazeh. Why now? I'll tell you why. You want to do the right thing, fine. But you can't deny that the Bach is very much against it. The Taz is not so happy, and I think it's more pashut. The baker is going to sell 5 pounds of dough. Someone walks in the store, can I buy 5 pounds? You can say, show me your ID card. You have to be a steady customer. It's not practical. But Lamaisa, it seems that those that hold its works, it only works, the way the Taz says, if it's a steady customer. And the Shach holds even that is not really the right thing. But again, what the Mas Binyamin stresses, Shach and Taz quote that if Lamaisa you buy from a guy, that's the worst eitzim. And Achra and Chavil, let me tell you what's negayah to all of us, not just bakers. Let's say a woman is in a very industrious mood and she makes 10 pounds of dough in a machine, if there is such a thing. Let's imagine there's a machine, a big machine. Then she goes, why am I being a batlan, taking it for myself? Let me take 5 pounds of dough and give it to my daughter to make a bracha. And there's 2 full 5 pounds. So this is not a problem, manos l'chalek. Why? Because you machalik into 2 chiyuvim. But the problem is, goyim bracha shein tzricha. Because you could make 1 hafrasha on this 10-pound dough. Why are you breaking it up and making 2 mitzvahs? See, the other case we had earlier, it's different people who have dough, so it's different mitzvahs. But here it's all your dough. But what does work, and this tak is a mitzvah lefarsim, if an isha has to make 10 pounds of challah for the upcoming Yom Tiv, makes 5 pounds at a time, that's all her machine makes, so that you're allowed to do. Make 5 pounds, be mafresh challah. Then make another 5 pounds and give that mitzvah to your daughter. The fact that you bake them all together is not the problem. The only issue is if you're breaking up a mitzvah into 2. But here, 5 pounds is 1 mitzvah, the other 5 pounds the other mitzvah. So the point is, we try very hard to do the mitzvah. It's a very chashuv mitzvah, but it has to be done properly. Before someone does any new idea, I would advise, ask a shayla, and then you'll have the schus of challah. Guten Tag to you all.
Shame irgendwie, like you Rabbi Yakov Smith for today's share. We like to give Yashikar to Rabbi Eisner for sponsoring today's share. We Nishmas Chamoise Henya Bas to Isaac Shalom there's a schus for Zivugim for Bnei Yisrael that need Zivugim. It has a great schus sponsoring a share. Call Egan Shir 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Seek him after Kaddish, Rosh Hashem. Chananya van HaKash, Emer, Rosh Bochel, Zakis, Es Tisel, Vihibim, Ter Mitzvah, Shenem, Adonai, Chofes, Amad Sitka, Yagdol, Ter V'Yader.
Hey! 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 Okay, Rabbi, so we're all sticking together. We're not Asui L'Chalek. We're not Manos L'Chalek. We're not no Chilukim here, but to seek him on the Hafrashas Challah Required. Okay, but we see, obviously, we always see we have a beautiful Torah, how one simple Yisoid is the information of the whole Sugya, but basically, a bake is always Chayiv Challah. He should not sell until he takes off Challah, but individuals are Chayiv Challah, but Manos L'Chalek is a Vadai P'tur that no one disagrees. Manos L'Chalek, we look at it as if it's missing the shear, as if it's mecholik, or it's missing the shear and lechem. Whatever the case, Manos L'Chalek is an absolute P'tur. But when you divide 10 pounds and you're left with 5 pounds of chiyuv, that's fine. But typically, when you divide a 5-pound dough, that is suspect to being a Manos L'Chalek. But the question that we ask, so when you make 5 pounds and make it into separate loaves of challah or bilkalach, that is a manos l'chalek, but we had 4 factors that make it a problem. The word ozla, where the chiv goes away, if you make it lacherim, or different zmanim, or if it's not litztar, if it goes to different people, or if it becomes different oichlin, kakish cake and challah, then indeed, manos l'chalek. But when you make loaves of challah, all the same challah, there's no kapeda, that is a perfect chiyuv challah, that's not any of the ozlam, and the chiyuv did not go away. Now, when someone divides the dough, challah and kakish cake, that's not a problem. If lemaisa, there are 2 reasons to bake challah erev Shabbos. One, fresh challah, and of course, the making the challah is the mitzvah, and to be misakin the chet of chava by making challah every Friday, it's only should be done if it can be done. If lemais you have no choice, you have a small family, so the best eights would be to make the 5 pounds, freeze some of it, or par bake some of it. That's also a good idea. But to bake 2 pounds and send away 3 pounds of dough to someone else is absolutely potter. To bake all and freeze some is a much better eitzah that works kol days. To bake 5 and send some lacherim, the minig is to make a bracha, not to be choishes. Some say it's kedai to make it sirif if possible. Pur mishloach manos, like we just said, the minig is to make a bracha. Some say make it sirif before you send it away. Freeze some of the dough is problematic. Some are making, but it's taka problematic. Not the best thing to do. Best eights is to partially bake some of it. A share mitzumtzum of 5 pounds is chayiv and challah, even though you're taking off the Hafrashah, because that's la'atzmoi, not lacherim, and of course the rest of the problem don't exist. A school that makes challah should do it right. Either bake all 5 and give each child their bilkalach. If they're not makbid, it's a problem. Or make 7 pounds and the 2 pounds you can do what you want, but it has to be done properly. The challah bake, the parties have to be done right. It has to be yours to use. You can't throw it out. It has to be a gedoyla, not a katana. But most important, it has to be a chiyuv challah. If the bakery took off challah, or the organization makes a big amount and divides it, that's taka problem of goyim bracha and tzricha. So it should be done properly. Each bring their own ingredients, make it at home. the question that we said about changing the mind, so basically if you made an aldas to machalik and you were machalik it, so now you have a chiyuv. You made it shalei mas machalik and now you taka were machalik it, but once the chiyuv was chal, the chiyuv was chal. The last point is a goyish baker is potter. I mean, there's no chiyuv whatsoever. If you do want to buy from a baker, it can be done if it's done right, a steady customers, but the minute as the business continued, at home to make £5, stop, make a bracha, then make another £5 and make a bracha, that's fine, but to make it £10 and cut in half and give 2 children the brachas, that's a problem of gorim bracha, shein etzich.
Yes, sir. Pesach, why don't we do it?